Let me see if I can find the link one more time. I don't know if she resent it or we'll use a link from yesterday, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think the link from yesterday will work.
Oh, great. And they did put a hyperlink to the interim actions on the front page. All good things.
And then I think the person who was recording for us joined the Zoom so they could share their screen on that screen.
Okay. Or someone in the Zoom also,
Yeah.
like whatever works for everyone.
Who would like to record for us today?
I'm going to actually peek into the furthest room down to make sure they have enough people, because if we have 2, 4, 6 here, that might mean that there's some empty rooms.
I know. I'm thinking I should do
I
that
can
too. That's a
believe,
lot of
yeah,
people in this room.
there's a lot of,
I'll move over as well.
yeah, let me see.
Okay. Okay. Hang on. I'm leaving the room. Let's
Okay.
see.
Hey. Oh no. So everybody's okay. We can absolutely make it work with the number of people in every room. I'm happy to type recommendations, but Tina, if you're happy sharing your screen, that's fine too. Either way.
I'd rather you did it. You're better at it.
Okay, yeah, let me climb into the Zoom and let me find the link.
Taking a page out of Michelle Obama's book. See her interview the other day.
What's that?
Why she didn't go to the inauguration, she's got so much flack about it. She just said, I've just decided I have to learn how to say no. Some things that I just don't want to do.
And good for her,
Good
as
for
she
her.
should, right? As she should.
Absolutely, she's done way more than her share.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Sure wish she would run for president.
Yeah, so did I.
I'm saying.
Well,
I have to get the agenda. Sorry, Tina. 1 second.
The agenda or the?
No, because that's where the Zoom link is. I have the slides.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm excited. I actually have really big opinions about the one about loans and grants, but I figured I'd let other people marinate on that one right now. And then we can always come back to it. And then hold it. Okay, we are in 153 updates to standards, or no, 151 changes to the exam.
No, we're
Where are we?
153.
153. Thank you. My brain is very tired. That's me. That's not your guys' problem.
Might be.
Might be a problem in a minute as I talk. Okay, thanks for your patience, everyone.
It's just the same slide from yesterday.
I'm just closing all of my windows. Okay, there we go. Does that look right?
I think we're
Green.
green.
Okay.
Green.
Yeah. Should we just start at the top, or do you want to go through them all independently and then have a conversation about what we think should be consolidated?
I probably work better independently first.
Yeah, you want to take a minute?
Agreed.
Okay, let's take 5.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I do want to comment, provide
Yeah.
a comment. Some of the things in here that have been crossed out and Margaret is being addressed by interim actions. I don't think they actually have been addressed by interim actions.
I've been actually trying to read them through the cross outlines.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to bring any specific things?
Well, so I'm not sure whose slide.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is where it starts crossing out.
So the interim action is not requiring
Timely
programs to
feedback.
provide feedback. It's saying they can provide feedback, but there's not the interim actions don't make that requirement. So,
Might bring that into a conversation.
Yeah, and then change that what's on the top there.
yeah. There you go. And
Is
then
it
I'm
not fully,
Mhm.
or is it not at all?
it's not at all.
Okay.
The interim actions only clarify what support can look like.
Okay.
But if we want to say that programs have to, then it needs to get put into a program standard. And I'm not sure if it's addressed in another one, but I just,
It's slightly
Okay.
addressed, gosh, where is it? Given individualized and specific feedback.
Yeah.
To allow the TPA to be
Mhm.
formative in nature. Do you feel like that is similar?
I think I would add, because if it has to get put into the standards, if we want it to become
Can I
something
move this
programs
slide
are held
backwards to it?
accountable to. That's to go back to your point, Bev. If we want it to get addressed through accreditation, then it has to get put in the standards.
And I'm not finding the one that everybody said is there that addresses accreditation.
Well, I don't think it uses the language at accreditation specifically.
It does. It's
Oh, it
on
does.
the tail end.
It was, wasn't it number 29, 20?
The word accreditation is not on any slides.
It
It's
isn't.
on one. It's on one.
It's not.
I thought it was just the program
I'm
standards.
spelling it wrong.
49 is
Yeah.
required forms of support.
I don't, I'm
related
sorry, my
to-
laptop's not charged, so I'm charging it up right now. But there's one that we created and it's on the end of that one.
On the end of 29?
It's not
I don't
showing
know
it.
what
It may
slide
have been
it is.
deleted.
You know.
It's not there.
Let me see, go through all the green ones real quick.
This is the last green one.
Okay, go up one.
Credential candidates and scoring,
It's
No,
not
it's
that one,
not.
data,
not that one,
program standard 5,
not that one,
orientation,
not that one.
embedded ed code,
Let me see.
fieldwork and coursework.
No, that's not it.
Developing as
Oh,
teacher.
here's accreditation on 31,
What is that one?
but in addition, it's like a throwaway.
Yeah, that's
In
what it
addition, the CTA should include
Yes.
a minimum passage rate for the TPA to be applied through the accreditation process. Okay, that's a perfect example of what Ben talked about something that is thrown into something else, and it really,
So we could split them and make 2 separate?
I think if it helps clarify.
Okay.
So this was one thing I also wondered about when I read through a lot of these. A lot of the things that we're recommending could be demonstrated through the accreditation process. And I just wonder if we want to look at each of these things just because it's put in standard 5 doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be demonstrated in the accreditation process. And if there are specific things that we want programs to do within the accreditation process, then we should make that more explicit, I think.
Is there specific language you think we can add to make that possible?
the typing.
You're on,
Because program
Well,
standard
31.
4 is about monitoring and assessing students. And so I'm wondering if we could put some language there, or does it fit better under program standard 5? So far, we haven't made any recommendations at all regarding program standard 4.
And standard, okay. Well, if it goes under monitoring and assessing students,
Meaning
That-
monitoring and assessing their students, and then program standard 5 is the overall program, right?
I kind of think it goes in overall program just because it's not the program that's assessing them. Like it's, when you're going to assessing students, that's about throughout the program, and the TPA is not the program's assessment. So, I mean, it's splitting hairs, but I kind of think it would be in the overall.
Which is 5, right?
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
I think that I am, as a person who's making recommendations, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think just the clarity of our intention probably should be the focus right now. And then where it gets placed, I think that they'll have to work out those fine details in terms of how that works as they work through it in committee. Does that make
Program
sense?
standards should be.
Like, because I'm
revised.
just gonna take this to committee.
So let's just say program standards should be revised to reflect this, not specify which standards,
That'll work.
accreditation.
And what is it exactly that we want to recommend that they add to a program standard?
I think the concept is that in addition, that the data that the commission considers in the accreditation decision should include TPA pass rates and other TPA data.
And I'm wondering as well,
You can have this wording here, correct?
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm wondering as well, so if there is an institution and there is no threshold for pass rates, then how do we hold them accountable?
Right, so my thing was it should be considered as part of the accreditation data. And you're saying, and I agree with you, that there should be some trigger of,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we were looking at that LPI report, that it has that group that is over on the far left where they have 60% or less. And so we don't think it's our role to establish that delineation, but we feel like the commission would be the best body to establish. We called it a minimum passage rate. Maybe that's not the right phrase, But in essence, unless that is established, then there's no teeth in it.
And maybe it's not a pass rate in itself, but it's a concept of being an outlier low,
Oh,
like the
that's
low
good.
end of the pass rates around the state, like, so it floats. So if everybody goes up, it's like, it's
That's-
just, if
I
you're at
like
the
that.
tail end, you're always gonna be.
Use a euphemism like.
Can I make
programs? Oh,
a
go ahead.
comment?
Yeah.
One of the things I noticed about when doing this analysis of what's missing, I think we used to have a lot in here about programs taking responsibility for candidates who don't pass. And I don't see that anymore. And maybe we do want to include, make its own separate recommendation, something about what programs do with respect to candidates who do not pass, both in terms of addressing the overall pass rate, as well as keeping in contact with the candidates. In other words, we don't want programs, this whole practice of just, well, you passed the program, but you didn't pass the TPA, goodbye.
Did you want it part of the same thing, Tina, in the accreditation consideration?
I think any of these things can be in accreditation. I think I agree with Kate about where, we could recommend that things are demonstrated in accreditation, or we can just say via program standards and accreditation.
Yeah, I think we could just be generic about in the standards, but I think we need to be explicit about
What we want
it's
them to
used in
have.
the decision, like it's consequential.
Yeah,
Because
That
when the
it's not just-
accreditation team goes, it's
Right.
looking to see if the program is operating in line with the
Right.
program standards and the
Right,
common
and
standards.
unless you tell them that that's part of what they base their decision on,
Mm.
they'll
Well, and
just
I
say,
think-
well, we look at it, but
Or there have been times, because I'm an accreditation lead, I know what
Mhm.
happens in the accreditation world, and they say there's no language on that in the
Exactly,
standard.
Right,
exactly.
So
That's
we
what was my
can't,
point in the
that
big
can't
room.
be a
Yeah.
stipulation
Right.
because there's
no
no
language, right, yeah.
language.
That was my point in the big room, that you have to explicitly say
Mhm.
that it's a trigger for a negative outcome.
And so I feel like that second paragraph there, or that sentence that's in bold, I would copy that and move that onto a separate slide
Absolutely.
so that we can begin to propose what we think is needed.
So just for clarity,
And it's not the CTC, it'll be the COA.
okay, can I remove this sentence from this because we're moving
Yeah.
elsewhere?
Yeah.
Okay. And then we're gonna call this a COA.
Well, the CTC would establish
Okay.
the language,
The
but the
CTC.
COA would implement it.
Right.
Through the accreditation, through the COA. Something
So
like
let's-
that, that's
let's-
chunky.
Change include to establish.
Do we want to call it a minimum passage rate, or do we want to call it a standard deviation, or do we want to call it,
I think.
because minimum passage, then we're gonna start getting like churn and burn.
Right, and then
boundaries where
we're
there's, like,
gonna get,
pushing out.
close. But we don't, I
But
don't
I
think-
love that outlier concept.
well, so I think we have to clarify too what we mean by, we're not establishing a new pass rate for each of the TPAs. We're establishing a
Right.
rate of passage for the number of candidates who,
At the aggregate level.
So the
at first,
CTC.
I think maybe it's a first time pass rate.
But Ursula's right about, it's an aggregate for the institution.
I know, but I think we need some language that clarifies between, if you get 40 points on the TPA, you pass, a candidate's pass rate versus
Maybe
the
we-
program's overall.
Right.
Yeah, the programs, I like that. The CTC should establish whatever we're gonna call it, put a blank there for now.
Should that be annual?
Maybe
Every 5 years? Because these things
a
should.
minimum rate. Maybe it should establish a minimum. I don't know.
Aggregate candidate pass rate.
I have an idea. should review annual data to notify the lowest performing campuses.
Put that on the page as our draft.
Okay.
Put that on the
I
page.
think like that will change every year. Does that make sense?
But
Like,
I think where you're going is a good process for how it'll work, but it's
Yeah.
not the teeth that we're trying to get to. It's like, what is it? You know, that's what the commission can
the
do. is notify
lowest
you, you
pass
know.
rate will change each year because the numbers will change each year. Does that make sense?
So
So it can't be like a number we decide
so
today.
the
'Cause that number
CTC should establish a standard
A standard.
rate of. It's like you're trying to pull these words out of yourself.
I think they should
Tell them what we
establish,
want.
yeah, a minimum.
end of the bell curve.
I agree, Kate.
Kind of like, we don't want to use the word trigger, but it's like an indicator level of outlier, of low outlier aggregate, too many words.
Is this looking good? Keep going, Kate.
What you need is just one of us just start writing.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, it's the power of the first draft.
I don't know if we want to put specific, well, go ahead, keep going. I,
It's not campuses,
So-
it's programs.
Part of our charge, though, was to take a look at world languages, to take a look at BIPOC individuals who are being underserved by the current system.
So we would say to establish a criteria for lower performing
Programs,
institutions or
yeah.
programs.
Because, you know, some are.
Because summer, yeah.
Programs.
I wouldn't use institutions either, because some are districts, some are, yeah, programs work.
I think that first sentence can just be a period, and then the second could be, oh no, I mean after your parentheses.
After the parentheses, I agree. And then because it's not just for review. Program, and then programs that, you know, it's like programs that fall under the criteria, programs that, you know, don't meet the level. You know, it's something about this data will be consequential for accreditation decisions.
I think it should also be CTC should establish a criteria for identifying lower performing
There you
programs.
go.
Thank you.
For identifying and notifying?
No, they'll notify them. I don't think, because the criteria won't notify, but if they, I think again, that's getting into the process of how
Yeah.
they do it, but
Okay.
when you think of all the stuff, the pre-visit stuff in accreditation that goes on, programs are gonna know if they're
Right.
below the.
I think there also needs to then be a remediation process. I think CTC should also establish a remediation process that's demonstrated through accreditation or something.
So through
you-
CTC or CTC must require the remediation that would be demonstrated through accreditation?
So are we saying,
That's a whole nother thing.
are we
Yeah.
asking, is this gonna happen annually? Or is this gonna happen
Well, it's
during the accreditation
It's gonna have to go
cycle?
through a
I-
cycle.
Every 7
Yeah.
years.
So if
Because
it's
that's
gonna,
the whole program
right, so-
here. That's
right,
it.
so if it's gonna happen through the accreditation process, that could lead to a finding or a stipulation
Right.
where if you discover that there are institutions that are not properly employing the continuous improvement model, there would be a stipulation or a finding that would require them to do a 6-month and an annual report, for
See,
example.
I don't think remediated fits here, because that's a whole different thing. We're trying to just get if you're a low performing thing. And I think your language about findings and stipulations is right, but I think it's not about if findings and stipulations. That's the consequence of a remediation, Kate. It's not, you got the cart before the horse. It's if this data must be addressed through the accreditation process through the COA, possibly resulting in findings or stipulations in the accreditation decision.
Yes.
Sorry, one more time.
Stipulations in the accreditation decision.
I think that conveys the general idea behind this. I think there's a second part that relates specifically to candidate support. I don't know if that goes here. It could, because I think that has to also be demonstrated in the accreditation process. And that's the idea that you can't just leave candidates alone after they've.
So where is that other recommendation about the programs have to support candidates?
I
Because
don't know, it's gone.
it seems like that should be the one that we can say, programs support candidates and insufficient support can
And
be addressed through.
That pertains to program standard 4, where you're talking about how the institution supports the candidates.
Right.
So we should specify that's in relationship to.
So where's
Standard
that,
four.
where is that recommendation must be there somewhere about
It's not in
supporting.
here anywhere. It's not in here
I
anywhere.
found equitably support the development of all candidates, especially candidates who are disproportionately impacted by low pass rates.
Where is that? Which,
That's slide 7. Does that feel right? Is that the one?
Scoring.
Yeah, but it's all kind of bleeding
Yeah,
together.
we find their curriculum too.
yeah,
Didn't we have a recommendation that had like a 1 year, you had to support it for 1 year for free?
we
Well,
did something like that. It was gone, but and I don't know if we have to be that specific, but I think
Right.
the point is, I think even in accreditation, programs need to demonstrate what they're doing with candidates who are not passing, particularly candidates who pass the program but do not pass the TPA. They need, that's why I think it might be in this slide, which is about accreditation and demonstrating what the program is doing when they have disproportionately low pass rates, but also all programs need to demonstrate what they're doing with candidates who do not pass.
If you look at slide 44, it was tells out. Submit documentation how they support credential candidates that have not successfully completed the performance assessment.
And that isn't in the interim action.
Yeah, that
Not
one.
interim action. And so what we can do, here's my humble suggestion. We have a lot of slides. to get
Where is, okay, I'll look for that specific interim action.
And so that was slide 47. Oh no, I'm so sorry.
That was 44 you just showed me.
44. And so that was slide 44. So if you wanted to use language about how they will support credential candidates who have not successfully, there was another proposed action that maybe we can add that language to. Is that what you were thinking?
Where would that other one be that you were thinking?
It's
This one is so jam-packed though, 32.
also 27 ends with candidates must be supported with reflective activities based on the feedback they receive, regardless of whether they pass or fail.
Oh,
Yeah, but that's not quite the same.
I know, I'm just looking for
Yeah.
where,
Thank you.
where do we have that language about you have to continue working with them even if they fail?
I'm gonna try to find.
I'm gonna take off this has become an interim action for 44 because
Yeah,
it is not.
makes sense.
And I'm gonna put my sassy, this has not become an interim action.
I'm trying to look at
We will
interaction
not take
now.
offense, Kate.
I also, cost-free is a discussion in a different slide. I am taking those words out.
Yeah,
Because there's another slide that discusses that.
Hey, here's another one, and it was deleted. 36 says programs must support candidates with reflective activities based on feedback to further their ongoing growth and development, regardless of pass or fail. It's almost the same language as that previous one.
That's why they deleted it. I
Yeah,
think.
so they deleted it, but I'm just looking for where did we had that 1 year thing, which I don't think is the greatest idea, but I'm just, where did it go?
I'm working on the other end, maybe that's in the middle. Yeah.
You guys promised independent time to think.
Okay, here it is.
Give
It'd
it
be like
away.
4 minutes. I know.
So Kate, it's 44 where you put this does not become an interim action. Requires institutions to submit documentation on how they will support credential candidates that have not successfully completed. So let's put the accreditation teeth in this one.
yeah,
Can I use similar language to the previous one?
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's
Take the
great.
language out of the other accreditation one
Yeah.
and throw it in here. That
Oh, friends, I have to find it. Bear with me.
that's 44.
This data must be addressed through the accreditation process. There,
Yeah, copy
Yeah.
and paste it and then we'll
and then we'll tweak it.
yeah.
Oh, the font is different. I'll fix it.
Anonymous Goose, is that who you are?
I am a goose.
So to tweak this, to submit documentation on how they'll support. It's the clause about this data doesn't fit because the first part doesn't ask for data. So we're saying we're adjusting the standard to require them to tell us how they're supporting, but we haven't put in any criteria about what's good support, what's bad support. So somehow we want to say, this is not it, but somehow the accreditation process, there's some qualifier that says good support, so maybe up in the first paragraph, how they will effectively support credential candidates. And again, that's not specific, that doesn't tell us, but I mean, we're getting,
It's not measurable.
Well, I think we could leave the top part just support, and then the second part has to be demonstrating their success via the accreditation process. It's not quite the right, but they're not going to know if it's effective until they've done it. And then
Okay.
accreditation
Okay.
needs to check on it.
So data.
The
data will be
effectiveness, how about
data,
just,
data reflecting the effectiveness of the support.
yeah.
So let's for
Or
data.
it could just be that, yeah, however. Mhm.
There we go. I like that.
Will there be unintended?
Or, sorry, I was just gonna say, we could just say the effectiveness of support must be addressed through the accreditation process, and whatever is established for measuring that is left a little open.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Kate, do you want to put a little note on top about not an interim action and that we added the second, whatever.
Yeah, great.
There we go.
I like that stuff.
Oh, team, I'm so glad we got this back in here again. I just thought this was such
Yeah.
an important one.
I am a little concerned about what else was left on the table as interim actions.
Well, let's go through them.
Yeah, I also have a question. The very front one that was crossed out, embed formative and final experiences, and it was crossed out. Uh, it was in slide 27. And I just wondered why it was crossed out. I think we put that in to clarify because everybody thought you could only have formative experiences be part of coursework and clinical work and not the final. And anyway, I've just wondered, what are your thoughts on that and why it might be crossed out?
Can
May not be
anyone
right.
translate Ben's note from a program or candidate viewpoint? What do we mean by formative and final? In accreditation, is this IPA for how we teach and then another IPA for submission?
What's IPA?
I don't know. Should I go ask Ben?
Well, I don't.
Yeah.
No, it's IPA.
Maybe it's a typo. Just ask them real quick.
Yeah. Do you
Well,
mind? It's 27, slide 27.
We could also make a comment or just a question. I could just put a comment that's a question. Do you want me to just make my own comment there?
He might not get to it until the actual meeting. Because I think he's on a different slide right now. But
That's final. I think we can though
I
deliberate here.
okay. So as a person who's looking for clarity, because some people will be translating our ideas and we won't be in the room.
Right.
I think that just saying embedding TPA experiences into coursework makes
Yeah.
it very clear that they work on the TPA. But if you say formative and final, are we expecting them to do practice versions of the TPA and then the TPA and then right? And that becomes
A rabbit hole.
what do you call it? The thing that we're trying not to do.
Yes.
A duplicate.
Okay, and I totally agree with you, Kate. You make perfect sense there. And how do we address this this thought that the TPA has to be completely separate? Like yesterday, somebody was saying that a program thought that they couldn't even talk to the candidates about the handbook. They just handed over the handbook, here, go do this.
But we know that's wrong because of the handout that we just received.
I know, but then there's also the thought that you can't actually there was questions, can you have people do parts of the TPA in a course? Like a lot of people didn't know that you could do that and do course assignments have that. I guess in my small group that came up, somebody asked that question. And certainly you can have candidates working on the final TPA in a course, and it can be part of your course.
I find that to be very surprising because they hold those meetings regularly
Yeah.
to explain all of that. So you'd almost have to be living under a rock
But
not to know
faculty-
that.
I know. I just don't know why it came up
meetings,
so
there's
often.
still
But
people.
I'll let it go. If you
Wait.
guys think it's fine, I
I
totally.
think the rule has been that it's perfectly okay to teach to the test.
Yes.
You know, but you don't have to, in terms of, you don't have to make your curriculum do this or that, but it's okay to, you know, that.
Yeah. Okay. We'll just leave it.
Leave it with the crossed out words too.
Yeah.
So which slide is that, Kate? I'm sorry.
27.
27.
Let me go back there and see what it looks like now.
I think we have about 20 more minutes.
That looks nice.
And I know we have.
There's a typo. Isn't it just this and should be crossed out, right?
We're at
Uh,
27. Oh, yeah, reflective activities. Oh, and based on the feedback.
Maybe actually a comma there. And based on the feedback they receive, regardless of whether Oh.
I think the
Grammar
and is
there. Can I
just,
fix that?
Yes.
yeah,
I'll-
just cross
Uh,
out, get
That
rid of
was
the and.
We should have
Right.
Ben do a presentation. But finish the thought and I'll let you know what IPA stands for. Write down my notes.
Kind of beer.
We just want to get rid of the and, right?
And based on feedback they receive regardless.
No, I think it's just
Oh,
all
yeah,
through
Yeah, yeah,
FB
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, okay, I see you. Got it.
I'm ready to report it.
Yeah.
IPA is for program accreditation. They have to show how they introduce every single TP,
Oh,
introduce, practice,
introduce
and assess.
practice. Right, okay.
They were asking, could we include in there that for the accreditation process, they'd be allowed to use TPA results for that assessment criteria? Because right now they're not allowed to, so they have to use their program assessments and
Oh,
then do it again for TPA, which makes it duplicative.
gosh,
Again,
that's
TPA
really
results.
critical. I thought they fixed that, but if they haven't fixed that, we better put this in here because that's crazy. I didn't even,
Where is
for
that?
years I was on the commission, I didn't actually know there towards the end that you couldn't use the TPA as part of the IPA.
Right.
Mhm.
We should definitely fix that. Thank you for checking on that.
And then he showed me how they have to, for all their courses, do that IPA for every single standard. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You have to have a
It's a
matrix
lot.
when you submit for program approval.
Yeah, he showed me the.
I don't think we should use IPA. We didn't even know what that was.
Practice and assess.
Is it really that simple?
I think it should just be the TPA should be included in the data matrix as part of, well, I don't know exactly how to say this because there is a separate part to this where all programs have to show how they're specifically what they're doing to embed the TPA. I think we're going to need some guidance on how we make sure that maybe it's just a simple sentence. The TPA can be an included assessment in the matrix.
Slide are we on?
Accreditation matrix, is that what it's called?
Yeah, in the accreditation matrix.
Well,
Yes.
it's in. Is it called the accreditation matrix or
It
the?
is. It's called the program. It's the matrix for the course, the program. So if
Yeah.
you're writing a PK3, you got to have it in there. If you have a multiple subject, you need a different matrix for multiple
Right.
subject. So it's a program matrix, not an accreditation matrix.
Do we need the first as data? Or should it just be, it should be an included assessment in the accreditation matrix, this data must be addressed? Is that still clear?
It's like I'm writing in a different
I think
language.
it's a program matrix, not an accreditation matrix, but I
Yes.
know that's split in
No,
here.
you're correct. And it would be in each program matrix, right?
Yes, in each program matrix.
Added slides.
And
Oh, I
I'm,
messed you up.
I'm
so
also
sorry.
thinking,
No,
Yeah, I added some.
could we consider adding some language to Common Standard Area 4 that puts the TPA data front and center there? What are your thoughts, Tina, about something like that? Or is that overdoing it?
I think it's fine to do that. I just I don't know. I'm just still back on the slide we were just on. Which one is that? 35? I don't know if we need this data must be addressed through the accreditation process because it already is if it's in the program matrix. we could, did you want to include that about standard 4 here or
Don't
so?
delete that yet. No, I'm thinking we would have a separate slide so that because then you've got multiple reviewers looking at TPA results. Because you know how when they go in, they always take a common standard team, and then there's a team that's checking the
Right.
program standards. So I feel like right now we're leaning in heavily on the program standards, but what about those common
Overall.
standards? Right.
I think that's a great
I
idea,
think you're
Ursula.
right. But I would, going back one step to Tina's earlier comment, the piece that Kate has highlighted, I would leave here because yes, even though it's in the matrix, I think everything we can do to make it explicit that it's part of COA's charge is a good thing.
All right.
But I agree also, Ursula, about that we're leaning into program and we need to be in the overall standards as well.
Yeah, I think that's
This
a
is
great idea,
good.
Ursula.
And I don't know where to
Should I
put what
add?
you're saying.
I think we would